Today on CityCast Portland, we're talking about the budget boost Portland City Council just voted in for themselves this week, as well as the City Council's policymaking game plan as outlined by their committees. We're also looking into Metro's proposed changes to the homeless services tax that Multnomah County commissioners are not too happy about. Joining me on this week's Friday News Roundup are Oregonian City Hall reporter Shane Dixon Kavanaugh and our very own producer, Giulia Fiaoni. It's Friday, January 17th. I'm Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. Welcome, everyone, to the Friday News Roundup. Shane, Giulia, thank you for hanging out with me this morning.
Good morning.
It is such a treat to be back on the CityCast podcast. Giulia, Claudia, thank you so much for having me. I'm ready to go.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Shane, I live for your welcomes, by the way.
Me too.
They're always so sincere, but yet there's always a tinge of, I don't know what it is, but it's spicy and I like it. Well, for those of you new to the show, today is the day we break down some of the biggest local stories of the week with some of the best and brightest journalists in town. But before we jump into the news, I usually ask an opening question so our listeners can get to know our guests a little better.
Oh, man, I forgot about this.
Oh, yeah, it's coming.
It's coming, buddy. And today's opening question is related to the news that Justin Timberlake joined Coach Balto's bike bus this past Sunday. It wasn't a school day, but according to a report by the Oregonian, Shane, about 200 people showed up on bikes, mostly children and their families. And for a half-mile ride down Northeast Klickitat Street to Alameda Elementary School, they were just blasting JT, having a ball. JT joined because Coach Balto's viral invitation made the rounds on pretty much every social media platform beginning in October because they saw that Timberlake would be in town for a Moda Center concert this month sometime, which is crazy. I can't believe it actually happened.
That is crazy.
Right? So this brings me to our opening question. I foresee this now being a thing of visiting musicians and celebrities joining the Portland Bike Bus. So my question to you two is, what other guests would you suggest Coach Balto reach out to join the bike bus when they're in town? I can go first if you need a moment because I have a solid option.
Okay.
All right.
Go for it.
Might not be family friendly, but I
All
checked. Right. I looked at who was coming, to town. And it would be amazing if Tyler, the Creator, Shane, do you know that rapper, producer?
God.
Sure do. Odd Future.
Yeah, cultural scoundrel. He's going to be in town for his Chromacopia World Tour in February. If you follow his music and art, you might already know he's already fond of bikes, but I can imagine him just skateboarding with a pack, which would be so cute. And if that's too edgy, because Tyler does have a complicated past, as you know, Shane, odd future. Danzig will also be in town March 26th. And I can't imagine anything more glorious than Danzig on a morning bike ride with a ton of kids on the back while everyone is blasting Misfits.
Wow.
Right?
You thought about this.
I did. I mean,
These are both great.
It was easy. I knew the question, and then I did the research.
That's how it works every
That's
time.
How that works.
I do have one. It's a selfish idea because I'm not a person who knows many celebrities, but I do know this one. Bryan Cranston from, first off, Breaking Bad, many other movies, and also Malcolm in the Middle.
He's going to be in town?
I don't know when he's going to be in town, but I hope maybe someday he is in town. He would just bring a really grounding dad energy for these kids' mornings. I just have this vision. I feel like he's a fabulous individual from everything that I don't know about him. But that's my selfish Portland bike bus request.
That's really cute. I can see all the little kids dressed up like Jesse.
Yeah. It's perfect.
It's just a lot of...
They'd be handing out little bags of blue candy.
Blue candy! Shane, I think you can top that one.
Come on, Shane.
I certainly don't know if I can top that one. I'm just going to speak my truth. And for whatever reason, as you were inviting us to consider this, the first person that popped into my head, and it's going to definitely come across as a little random, but I'm just sticking with it. Actor Daniel Day-Lewis.
I drink your milkshake? Daniel Day-Lewis?
Yeah, Daniel Day-Lewis. So you were referencing his role as Daniel Plainview from There Will Be Blood.
Thank you.
We could do Bill the Butcher from Gangs of New York. I mean, or even Christy Brown from My Left Foot. Like, take your pick. But I just think, man, the possibilities are sort of endless if we brought him here. And he just seems like a cool fucking guy.
He has theatrical diction.
Mm-hmm. The kids would love it.
Yeah, I feel like that's what kids love these days, is really well-pronounced words. Well, you guys, thank you both for your answers. They were excellent. Now all I can think of is Daniel Day-Lewis dramatically riding a bike.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's vivid in my head.
It's really good. On to the news of the week. Shane, you're actually sharing a headline that you wrote not that long ago.
Well, I mean, the news happened last night being Wednesday night, and it happened pretty late in the evening because things are a little different now at Portland City Hall. We have a new form of government, an expanded 12-member city council, a new mayor. We referred to him earlier as Cool Keith Wilson. That's cool with a K. But one of the changes that's happening, because this didn't occur before, but according to the newly drafted council rules, the city council will hold at least one meeting a month on a Wednesday, third Wednesday of every month, starting at 6 p.m.
Oh my God.
And the idea is to try to make City Hall more open and accessible to like working people, many of whom can't take time out of their jobs to necessarily show up at a 9:30 a.m. council meeting. So that's kind of the idea and spirit. But
which is great. It's great. But is it great for City Hall reporters?
I mean, I was happy to show up there at 6 p.m. last night. I am going to admit I took off a little early because this thing was a real doozy. I believe it went close to 5.5 hours. So it wrapped up around 11:30. And, I kind of tapped out around 10 o'clock. Also because the main thing that I was there to cover and write about got wrapped up about 3.5 hours into the show.
So what was that? Do tell.
Yes.
Yeah. So mind you, this is like the second time that the city council is meeting as a formal body. They had one council meeting 2 weeks ago. This is the second one. And at the top of their to-do list here was to decide whether or not they were going to increase their council budgets and the budget of the mayors by millions of dollars.
And expand them for what?
Right. The argument here, and I will just tell you that I think the council makes a compelling case, although it's one perhaps that is difficult politically, and especially one that will be difficult for the public to stomach, as the city is already staring down a pretty severe upcoming budget. There's going to be millions of dollars in cuts already.
Yeah.
And this is going to only add to sort of the budget gap effectively, because this new council and new mayor, the decisions for their staffing were made by the former Portland mayor, Ted Wheeler, the former city council, in consultation with the city's transition team. And those predecessors landed on this decision that each of these new 12 city council members would only get sort of one designated staff member, and they would have some shared staff as well. And the mayor's office was going to be equipped with 5 staff people. Mind you, Ted Wheeler had 17 to 20 folks throughout his administration. But, some of this is because the job changes, the roles are changing, things are becoming a little more focused on the administrative side of things. Having said that, there was a citizen-led government advisory committee that made staffing recommendations for this new city council last year. And they did this by compiling a bunch of research of peer cities. Like, what do the staffing models look like in similar legislative bodies? And it was anywhere from like 2 to 5 people.
Per council?
Yeah, per council member.
Okay.
2 to 5 staff members. And Mayor Wheeler and the city transition team led by the current city administrator, Michael Jordan, said, thanks, but no thanks. We're going to give you all 5 staff for the mayor, 1 per council. That was not aligned with the recommendation that this advisory body that did the research made. And in fact, I had a whole conversation with Michael Jordan and Mayor Wheeler back in July, because I was pushing them on this issue a little bit, because a lot of people were looking at this right from the get-go and saying, this new legislative body is not going to be set up for success here if they're going to be understaffed.
Yeah. So what you're saying now is that this was the thing they were talking about for 3 hours, was like, okay, so we all need, how many more staff is each council member trying to get?
Well, right. So the proposal that they were looking at here was for collectively about $4.5 million. But that's just through the end of this fiscal year. For the remaining 5 months, this is a $5 million price tag,
What?
roughly.
Wow.
So the idea is that this would allow them each to bring on one additional staff member,
Okay.
3 additional staff members for the mayor. But then there's also this huge chunk of money that each council office would get for additional administrative and office costs that aren't personnel related.
Paper clips. Yeah.
Well, I think the
It's a lot of
idea,
paper clips.
I think the idea, Claudia, is that this could potentially provide the money for counselors to open district offices, because that's something that is a high priority for some of these council members, especially the East Portland folks. I'm just telling you what their perspective is.
Okay. I mean, we could go dive into that, but I want to find out where they're talking about getting the money from.
This is great. And thank you for asking, because this is where, things got a little messy and sloppy sort of from the get-go, is that the initial proposal that was filed by the new council president, Alana Purtle-Guinea, because she was hearing that there is this desire and demand from her council colleagues, and she herself is feeling this. They need more staff. They need more money. Was the proposal as written was the council is going to direct specifically that this money needs to come from the city administrator's office. So the city administrator's office has a budget of about $127 million. There's about 180 people that work within that office.
And that's Michael Jordan's office, correct?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
And also there are public-facing programs that are pretty popular in Portland, specifically what they call the Impact Reduction Program, which is the group of people that go around and remove homeless camps or clean them up around the city.
Oh, okay.
Or programs for graffiti abatement and addressing other livability issues are also within the city administrator's office. Now, a top city budget official who kind of wrote a financial memo to go along with this initial proposal effectively said, it's going to be our recommendation that if you're going to take money out of the city administrator's office to pay for council staff, you should take it from these popular programs.
Was that like a play to say it's not happening then?
I think there's probably an argument to be made that this was just kind of like the new city administration, the bureaucrats just like gonna throw down against the new elected staff.
That's what it sounded like. Yeah.
That's what it kind of feels like. There's an argument to be made for that. And certainly a number of city council members felt that way and kind of put some of these staff members on blast last night.
Oh, but it could still change is what I'm hearing. Because it could have been a threat to be correct. Simmer down, city council.
Yeah, so I think a number of members of the public really blew their stack when they read this story in the Oregonian last week. So council members started getting inundated with phone calls and emails saying, what on earth are you even thinking about doing? Yeah. The council's sort of saying, it wasn't our idea. City bureaucrats are the ones who are suggesting this, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, they had to basically come up with on the spot last night an amended proposal to take the money from another place within the city, specifically the general fund contingency.
And just real quick, did it pass?
Yeah, it did pass. It had to pass as an emergency ordinance, which means they passed it on the spot instead of waiting 2 weeks. That meant they needed 9 out of 12 council members to vote in favor of it. 10 council members voted for it. 2 just said, kind of, I need more information. This is going too fast. And so they just sort of said, we couldn't support this in its current form.
Well, Shane, that leads me to my last question here. Why now? Why rush this? Why not wait a month or two to say, hey, let's actually sit down and think about what we need based off of what is most urgent and then propose how many staff to add, how much to cut from where. This feels like it was rushed for no reason.
Certainly that perspective was voiced by some of the folks who provided public comment or testimony. Some of that was raised by the two council members who were Steve Novick and Dan Ryan were the ones that ultimately did not support this, just saying we need a little bit more time to actually figure out what the staffing needs are. However, the sort of majority opinion of the council was we needed the staffing yesterday. Already 2 weeks into the job, it's clear to us that we're not going to be able to do our legislative and our constituent duties with just a single staff person. So we just need to hire people immediately.
Well, before we move on, I have one recommendation. City Council, you could take it or leave it. There's 3 of you for each district, correct? Assign one of them to be like the constituent guy, Like, that's the guy you go to. But I know everybody wants to be the constituent guy because that's how you continue getting voted in. But, that would be the way. There's 3 of us. You know what I mean? We all can't do the same thing. I thought that was the whole point is, there's 3 of you. You're going to divide work amongst you, figure that out. But if each one of them wants to be a rock star, it's just not going to work out. Whatever. Well, Shane, thank you for spending the better part of your evening last night.
Yeah, just a note to listeners, find me at Portland City Hall at 6 p.m. every third Wednesday of the month. Come say hi.
Yeah, Shane will be, he's the one with magnificent mustache and usually just a really inviting sweater. I gotta say, every one of your sweaters that you've had on the show is just your sweater game is
yeah.
That's awfully kind of you, Claudia.
It's the
Thanks
truth.
So much.
I'm not out here waxing cars for free.
You're not just trying to butter me up.
No, it's real. I see it too.
Okay.
All right.
Wow.
Well, let's take a quick break here, and when we return, more headlines of the week. It's your last chance to see Exquisite Creatures Revealed, an exhibition from local artist Christopher Marley, on view at the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry until February 17th. Don't skip out on this rare opportunity for a close-up view of 10,000 rare specimens from around the world, which include a 10-foot-long spider crab and a whole preserved reef shark. Audiences are calling this exhibit one of the most beautiful they've ever seen and a truly magical experience. So this is definitely one experience you do not want to miss. You can see Exquisite Creatures Revealed at OMSI until February 17th. Get tickets today at omsi.edu. That's omsi.edu.
CityCast Portland is brought to you by Diamore Law Group. Let's face it, sometimes bad stuff happens. A serious injury, a catastrophic accident, or even a wrongful death. It can turn your world upside down. When it does, you deserve unwavering support from a dedicated team. Yep, you need a lawyer. Diamore Law Group has over 30 years of experience protecting the rights of Oregonians. Their team of skilled attorneys, led by distinguished trial attorney Tom Diamore, will work tirelessly to make sure your voice is heard and your rights are protected. Here's what one of his clients said. Tom fights for his clients from the first day they meet him through the last day of trial. If you or a loved one needs help holding those responsible for your injuries accountable, contact Diamore Law Group at 503-222-6333 or visit diamorelaw.com to schedule a free consultation. They are committed to fighting for the justice and compensation you deserve right here in Portland.
Well, my topic this week is actually based on a Blue Sky post by OPB City Hall reporter Alex Zielinski. You know Alex? You heard of Alex Zielinski, Shane?
Oh, yeah.
Alex Zielinski?
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Alex Zielinski.
Yeah, well, this Tuesday, she shared a PDF the city posted ahead of that said Wednesday's council meeting. And it outlined proposed council committees along with their members and who's leading them. And you were there, so I don't know if this is the exact same proposal.
This came a little later in the evening. After I decided to go home and call it a night.
So we don't know, right?
No, I do know. I mean, the resolution, this proposal passed.
Okay, so nothing changed.
No.
Okay, perfect.
I also watched the whole thing, so you can ask me, Claudia.
Julia, did you really?
I did, all 30 minutes.
That's so fun. Like, I read a off-brand tweet.
Hey, you got to have a mix of everything, okay?
Well, anyhow, it clearly shows our new city council's policy-making game plan and what issues are top of mind and being worked on immediately. I had a lot of faith when I saw this because I was like, oh my God, they're going to get shit done. But Shane, after hearing what you just told me, now I'm a little rattled. But anyhow.
Don't be rattled.
I'm rattled. So we'll be linking to this document in our show notes, like I mentioned. It was posted publicly. Well, yes, Shane.
I also just wanted to throw out, I know you're citing Alex's Blue Sky tweet on this. I also talked about this on Blue Sky as well. Just throwing that out there.
I need you to know that I'm not on Blue Sky. I'm not on X. And so the only things I get are when someone from internally sends me. This is how like grandma I am. Someone faxes me a freaking Blue Sky.
A printout of the post?
Yeah, a printout of the post. Okay, so anyhow. Like I mentioned, this was posted publicly by the city and Shane. Now, I'm not going to go into every committee's subject matter and rattle off members because ain't nobody got time for that. But just know that there are 8 total committees listed.
Yeah.
So here are the 8 standing committees in order of how they're listed. I don't know if it's order of importance. I'm just adding tension here. It probably isn't. Shane is shaking his head. Okay. Number 1, transportation and infrastructure. 2, homelessness and housing. 3, climate resilience and land use. 4, community and public safety. 5, arts and economy. 6, labor and workforce development. 7, finance, and finally 8, governance, which if you're wondering like, that committee is overseeing non-policy administrative functions of the city, periodically reviewing council rules and procedures, just like deeply important, but kind of unsexy, boring stuff.
I mean, that stuff is a real snooze. But it is also, it matters so much.
Yes.
It keeps things going.
Yeah. Okay. Well, before I dive into a few of the committees and share some things I found interesting, did anything stand out to you guys? Shane, yes. Oh, go on, Shane.
No, but I don't want to talk. I've been talking so much today. Julia, let it rip. You also watched the whole proceeding last night.
I did. I got some insight on a little bit of the tension that was brought up. Right away, it was identified by Councillor Kavanaugh that there were some of the committees that didn't have 4-district representation. And the goal in organizing these committees was to make sure there was at least 3. And in 3 of these committees, the Climate Resilience and Land Use Committee, the Arts and Economy Committee, and the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee only have 3 districts represented in them. And I think that one of those 3 that really stands out is Climate and Resilience and Land Use. District 4 isn't represented, and that's the district that houses the critical energy infrastructure hub.
Yes.
Which we talk about it a lot, but it's where a lot of very toxic chemicals are stored. It's a really contentious issue right now. If you know the name Zenith, that's related. So that caught my ear out of everything.
Yeah, well, can I just quickly say that one of the things I found interesting within that committee is that Mitch Green was not in it, which is the, District 4, because for some reason I thought that was a big part of his platform. And Dan Ryan was part of that group, who was also part of the council that let Zenith into our city. So I just found that
is so suspicious.
A little odd. But that's also just me being still upset about that.
And Claudia, if you were on X or Blue Sky, you could start putting out some conspiracy theories about all of this.
Oh my God, this is why I'm not. This is why I am not on X and Blue Sky, because we want this podcast to continue thriving.
I second that.
Shane, the things they cut out. This is why I'm so nice to Giulia and John. They could destroy me. Okay, so what did you see, Shane?
The thing that Giulia mentioned that Councillor Kavanaugh zeroed in on, this idea that not every committee had a representative from each of the 4 council districts. It's interesting that he specifically brought this up because I'm going to get a little into the weeds here. The council last night also adopted its rules, this boring stuff, rules of procedure. And there had initially been written into the city rules that there had to be representative from each of the 4 council districts on any committee. And Councillor Canal and Eric Zimmerman provided amendments to the rules that took that provision out.
No way.
Yes.
Samir, if you're listening, like what's up with that, dude?
Yeah, I am wondering about that.
Yeah, what's up with that? I mean,
Yeah.
because did you not know that it was going to happen? I don't know. I'm curious because like I'm wondering if he's like, oh, I thought it meant, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I certainly don't want to talk out of turn or speak on his behalf, but I'm just sort of filling that in. So
Yeah.
I think a couple of other things that stood out to me in terms of the committees. You mentioned Mitch Green not being on the climate and resiliency piece, but look at what he is chairing, which is the arts and economy. I mean, this is around economic development.
Yeah.
Mitch Green is an economist.
It's true.
He's got the credentials. He's a PhD. But also, he's an out and proud democratic socialist. And he made a big deal about that. He's like, hey, thank you, Council President, for having the faith that you could put a democratic socialist at the head of the economics.
Well, it was also finance, too.
Yeah.
He specifically called out because he's on that committee as well.
He is. But I was going to say the other, I think going to be, we don't know exactly what the finance committee is going to be doing.
Yeah.
But I imagine this is going to be the big one. It's going to essentially be a Ways and Means committee. Like, this is how the money's going to be carved up and decided.
Well, let me quickly tell you what it says they're supposed to be doing. They review financial investment policies and structures of the city. They oversee the bureaus addressing the city's financial system, and they make recommendations to the council on budget amendments. So, yeah big stuff. And I also do want to say that Mitch Green is not only in finance and arts and economy, he's also in labor and workforce development. I mean,
look,
he really went in there.
There are 8 committees. There are 12 council members. They're all going to be wearing a lot of hats here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of important work to do.
Julia, is there anything else you saw since you watched the whole thing?
Well, the thing that I will say, just to add one more point to Mitch Green's perspective, and I appreciated this point, he had brought up that as much as these committees are separate, everybody has their agendas, there are opportunities to come together and have 2 committees work on something that would be related, which I think folks might forget, where you have 2 committees that are like housing adjacent, like land use versus housing development. They're going to have to work together at some point, and that is going to be encouraged. So I think the perspective will widen, and it won't just be these few folks kind of driving the force. It will be encouraged to work together.
Well, they'll have to be. I mean, so many of these issues just cut across different areas. So
Totally.
Well, let's take a quick break here, and when we come back, more headlines of the week. Giulia, you looked into a headline we also talked very briefly about in our last Friday roundup. Lay it on us.
Yeah. So before I jump in, I'm going to just point out the weekly and sometimes daily dumpster truck is right outside my apartment. So please ignore the noise. But anyway, my story comes from Sophie Peel at Willamette Week. And she's talking about how just last week, Metro President Lynn Peterson released an outline for a ballot measure proposal that, if sent to the ballot and approved by voters in the upcoming May primary election, would change a handful of things related to the Supportive Housing Services Tax, or the SHS tax. And this funds a lot of homelessness services for Multnomah, Clackamas, and Washington counties. So I'm going to quickly lay out some of those changes and then get into the response from Multnomah County earlier this week. So for some context, the SHS is a marginal income tax collected by Metro and distributed to the 3 counties. Basically, currently, it's a 1% tax on individuals who make more than $125K a year or over $200K for joint filers. But back to the changes. So first off, one of those changes is that a percentage of the money would be used for building affordable housing, which now that's not allowed. You can only use the money for homelessness services specifically. Another one of those changes is to extend the tax from expiring in 2030 to expiring in 2050 instead. And lastly, another major change is lowering the tax from 1% to 0.75% in 2031. A little bit more context on those changes. Back in 2020, when this measure was passed, it actually brought in more money than expected. And for the first few years, the counties had difficulty spending that money on time. Sophie added a line in this part of the article that was, quote, "They've also struggled to combat homelessness," which I thought was kind of spicy.
Sophie.
But Multnomah County, they've emphasized recently that they're back on track with the spending and that in this current fiscal year, they're going to be right on line with what they should be spending regarding this tax. But regardless of all this, it was reported back in November, before this current iteration of the measure was released, that Metro and some business leaders and service providers in the area were in agreement on making changes to the SHS tax. But before I get into Multnomah County's response, do either of you have any initial thoughts on these changes?
Last week, I brought it up and I was like, I was speculating some things. And what I want to correct myself in is that I was like speculating that Metro was just like, hey, you're not really doing much with housing. But they can't be because it's not within the tax. So I just want to point that out.
Yeah.
Because that's not like something. But also, the reason I said that was because when I think it was Sophie who looked initially at when Metro was considering this last year, because what happened was all the downtown properties plummeted. It got so cheap. People were just like, oh my God, we could buy this whole building. And they were saying, Metro was saying that service providers were like, you know what we really need? This is going to sound crazy, man. Housing. And they were just like, they're looking at, how this is being spent, how it doesn't seem like it's doing much. And that's where that thought came from. Because I know county does oversee, they have contractors for housing and stuff like that, but nothing seemed to be lining up.
I was also just going to point out part of the rationale behind making these changes is because we had passed many years ago a region-wide affordable housing bond that has led to the creation of a fairly significant number of new housing units. But that money has been drawn down. That bond is done. That money has been committed to projects. So there's now no other additional regional money in the pipeline to continue spurring additional affordable housing. And the thinking at the time, and I think it continues to be the case, that Metro and also some of these, other folks who are thinking about this issue holistically are recognizing trying to go back to voters in the Portland area right now with a new bond proposal or any tax measure probably isn't going to pass, or would have a really difficult time passing, because there is kind of this antipathy at the moment of adding additional taxes or costs. So they're thinking, we probably can't get another affordable housing bond passed right now, or it's going to be very difficult. The supportive housing services tax is generating significantly more money to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars a year more than what we anticipated.
Yeah.
Why don't we take some of that money and start using it to, continue creating affordable housing?
That makes sense.
That's kind of the argument.
I see how you're laying that out, and I can appreciate that. So I'm going to jump into the response from Multnomah County now, just this week. So the Multnomah County Board of Commissioners really wants Metro Council to squash Peterson's proposal. They're adamant on it, and for a number of reasons. In general, they think it's too soon to go and make these changes. And they want to understand the potential impacts better and are concerned it could get in the way of efforts to extend the tax in the future in the case that this was unsuccessful at the ballot. They don't want to exhaust voters. And they also think that it would just shake up the progress that they're actually starting to make right now in combating unsheltered homelessness. So I think there's a sense of panic in reaction to this, where it's like, hey, hold on, we're doing something here.
Also, like,
we rely on this.
Yeah.
Yes. So Metro Council is going to take a vote on the proposal in the coming weeks, and that'll decide whether or not it's on the ballots in May. So I guess to be continued.
Would you guys vote for it? Look at Shane wisely not saying anything. He just nodded his head. He's
shaking
like,
his head. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll continue checking that out. Giulia, it's going to be your beat now. This is yours.
It's got to be.
Shane, Giulia, thank you so much for hanging out with me this morning and talking through some of these headlines. I really appreciate it. Yeah, you guys, I hope that you have a wonderful weekend. Do you get Monday off, Shane?
MLK Day?
I'm taking Monday off.
All right.
Yeah.
No, I think I get it off too.
Either way.
All I know is I've had it seared into my head. 3-day weekend coming up.
So no matter what, you're like, I'm
Yeah.
taking it. All right. Happy MLK Day, everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks, Claudia.
Be well.
That's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoy our show, please rate and review it. It really does help other people find us. And if you're wondering how you can help us out, that is one way you're able to support us. Our podcast production team this week are John Atariani, Giulia Fiaoni, and Lizzie Goldsmith. Our Hey Portland newsletter editor is Rachel Monahan, and our host is me, Claudia Meza. Original music by Jenny Conley and Steven Drizos. Additional music by Epidemic Sound and All the Kimonos. We're off this Monday in observance of Martin Luther King Jr. Day, but we're returning on Tuesday morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.